Hello and welcome to Gadget Joe, and today we have a rather interesting little white box. Hello, and in today's video we're going to take a look at this computer case here. This is a case made by a company called Sahara Gaming. I got in touch with them because I saw the case advertised on Facebook and I thought it actually looks really nice and interesting. Now there's a few things that appealed me to it, which is why I then took the initiative to basically contact a company and say, can you send me one over so I can take a look at it for the channel, because I feel that not only is it a very nice case to look at, there's also some rather appealing indicators that would probably sway you towards getting something like this. So I'll go into those in a little bit more detail as the video goes along. This video is simply a overview of the case. I was going to do a build in it, but unfortunately the micro ATX motherboard that I have got for this is actually a black motherboard, and I felt that that would really not do it any justice. So I'm going to get my hands on a white one, and in the future I'll do a build on this or in this so that we can really get to appreciate how nice a setup would look when all set up. So for now, all I'm going to do is basically take it all apart, dissect it, turn it around, explore what options you get on it in terms of expandability, fan mounts, radiator mounts, and the overall build quality in general. So yes, as I mentioned, this is the Sahara Gaming M808W. Now the thing that really would appeal to a lot of people about a case like this is that you get the case itself, and it does feature that very popular invisible edge design because it has two tempered glass panels that meet without a border here. You do get a border going round on the side and across the front, as you can see here, but that gives it an overall nice, tidy and quite modern aesthetic. Also, you get the included 4 ARGB fans, which we will take a look at in a moment, because they are not just standard fans, they are of course ARGB fans. These fans are the mirrored versions. They do sell them separately. With the M808W you get 4 included right out of the box. Now the fans, I'll probably talk a little bit more about the fans before I get into the case, because the fans are their mirror variants. Now they're called mirror because in the middle is indeed a mirror, so that really reflects everything that comes through to it, and it just gives it that extra bit of shine. When all the lights are on and everything's set up, it will really help enhance the lighting modes and the overall aesthetic of the case. What's more is these fans are modular. Now I use that in air quotes because a modular fan is still technically uses cables, but what they do is they have connectors on the sides, which I'll take one out later on in the video. They basically connect either side of the fan to basically eliminate any need for wires. You have the single 2 wires that are in the first fan, which then feeds to the included ARGB fan hub that comes in the back of this. So that means that there's less room for cables, and also you can get rid of all that cable mess that you normally get with fans. Now I know this is quite a controversial design. Not really controversial, but I know that companies like Lee & Lee have obviously made this, and they are currently going after a lot of patents, a lot of other companies for doing very similar fans, but I believe that this one will be exempt because it is technically still a cable going to it, and it connects via that cable and then sort of daisy chains together like that, rather than working through magnets like some of the other designs do. But nonetheless, it looks absolutely fantastic. What's more is these fans, they also on the side of them feature an infinity mirror effect on them, so it really does make them look absolutely fantastic. Now I'm going to finish going on about all that. You get the case, which is stunning, you get that tempered glass design, that frameless look, and you get those 4 ARGB 120mm fans with the modular design and that infinity mirror on the side. Now, what would you expect to pay for something like this? If I told you that you could get all this and those fans for £69.99, you'd probably think I was either pulling your chain or it was on some sort of offer, and it's just not. One of the key things that really appealed to me to this is the fact that it's affordable. Now there are a lot of similar cases on the market, a lot of cases look very similar basically. You often find with cases it's very difficult to push the boat out and design something completely unique. So it does share resemblance to a lot of cases on the market. But the fact is that you can get this for under 70 quid. So it's a bit of a no-brainer. Now I will go and mention that it isn't a standard ATX. It is quite small. I know I'm a large man and I look quite big next to this, and that is because it is really quite small. It is a micro ATX case, or an ITX case, so that it will work with smaller motherboards. But as you can see, straight out of the box, ready to go. All I've done is connected a power supply to the fan hub, not got anything else connected, so that I could get the fans going, and you can really take an idea of what it would look like when it's all set up. There is an LED button on the top, so that I can cycle through different modes, and it can also connect to your motherboard, so that it can sync through your motherboard software or your alternative software, so that you can change the modes to anything that you wish to change it to. So what I'm going to do for now, for the purpose of this video, is I'm going to disconnect that power supply at the back so that I can turn it around and really take a look at the case itself. So now that I've got the lights turned off, we can really take a look at the case itself. It does still have these, and I know I'm going to get a static shock from these, because I always do, because I'm cursed with that. I'll leave that one on for now, because it will require me taking all of those nuts away from there. But it is a nice clear glass. It's not tinted in any way, so that it doesn't impair the view of the case. Now a lot of cases have tinted glass, which I believe in a darker case, so for example if you got a black case, that would look actually quite nice, because the RGB in your system gives it a nice subtle flow. But when you've got a white case, it's go big or go home. You really want to show it off. You've got white because you want a statement piece. White isn't something that sits in a corner nice and reserved. It's really out there, bold. It's showing you that what you've got. So a full transparent glass is essential in my opinion, and you get that with both side panels on here, so that you can really show off your system. So what I'm going to do is turn it around, and as you can see, it is a nice compact little unit. There's plenty of ventilation on the side and the rear, so that even though it does have those two full glass panels, airflow isn't really an issue. Something that is very welcome, because a lot of glass cases often constrict airflow, and obviously as you can see, with it having a full glass front panel, and it is a borderless design so that it looks like a floating design, all the ventilation is then switched from the front to the sides and the rear, and that is basically so that you can design everything and not hamper your performance of the system. Now even though it is a very compact case, it's not very tall at all, it is actually quite wide, as you can see here, and that is because at the back you can house the power supply in this compartment here, so that it is completely hidden from view. You don't get that unsightly box that you normally get in most cases on the front. All you get to see is your motherboard, your graphics card, your cooler, everything, and all your fans, and your water cooling if you wish to go water cooling, with no big ugly PSU included. So it is a nice simple design. What I'm going to do now is take this front panel off. Now the front panel is held in place with these 4 screws, 4 nuts. Yes, I know. One little feature that I do like about this, and I've covered this before on the channel with some other cases that do it, they have a little rubber washer over the screw holes so that it keeps the glass panel in place when the screws are taken off. This is ideal because it then stops the glass from falling out when you take that last screw out. It sort of holds it in place, and as you can see, it's nice and sturdy. So let's get this panel off. Now obviously you've got the obligatory tempered glass caution sticker, which we will ignore for the sake of this video, because you can generally throw them around a little bit within reason. Now fortunately, I've never been stung by a smashed glass panel. That's not to say I'd like to start now, but generally speaking, just keep wary of the fact that it is tempered glass. The advantage of tempered glass, of course, is the fact that when it does go, it shatters into millions of tiny little pieces, so that you don't get any shards of glass. So you don't need to worry about that. If it's something that you were concerned about, getting a case that's primarily glass fronted, you are pretty safe. But if it does smash, or if you have it in your house and a kid hits it, or a cat sits on it like they normally do and manages to smash it, it's just going to break into loads of tiny little pieces. Now I know that's not ideal and it's a bit of a pain, but it's better than having big shards of glass. So as you can see, now I've taken it off, it is completely clear. and it is very nice. So I'm going to put this down aside. One tiny issue that I found with this case is that this front panel doesn't remove. Technically it does. There are 2 screws here, 2 screws here, and when you take the back panel off, the same on this side. So you could take it off, but I think personally this would have benefited from having some sort of magnet clicking system, because you've got that border here that goes round, but you could hide that behind. So being able to remove that would be ideal, because once you've got everything set up, you've not just got that one point of access, you can also access from here, which would be ideal for getting to fans once your system is in place. Now if you've got a water cooling setup, you'll have your pump here, that extra access point would have been really welcome. But again, it could be done, it's just a little bit of a faff about. So moving to the inside of the case, as I mentioned before, it is a micro ATX or an ITX case. This is basically allowing you to install everything on here, but you'll also find at the top there is quite an ample amount of space, including some holes, access holes for your cabling. Now this means that your motherboard doesn't sit right at the top of the case. It also sits central in the case and allows you to access all ports at the top of the motherboard as well as at the bottom, meaning that when it comes to plugging your CPU cable in, you don't have to worry about doing that before you put the motherboard in, and that is again very welcome. What that means is that the motherboard is slightly lowered from the top. At the top of the case there is space for radiators. In this case you can have space for a 360mm radiator at the top and a 360mm radiator at the bottom. You can also get a 240mm radiator at the rear. Obviously you can put a 120 if you need to, but there's no space for anything as such as a 420 or a 480. In terms of fan mounts on this case, you have space for one 120mm at the rear. You don't really need anything bigger than that, and it comes included with that ARGB setup as well. Now these fans, they do sell them separately, so that if you want to add more, so that you can put them on your AIO if you have them here, or you just want to fill the rest of the case with matching fans, they do sell them separately. On the bottom you can get 3 120mm fans, which we already have included, and on the top you can get 3 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans, meaning that you can actually have a 280mm radiator in there if you needed to as well. That deep set design and wide design also allows for up to 160mm CPU cooler as well. So if you're wanting a large air cooler, you can then indeed fit that in nicely. You've also got space for up to a 410mm GPU, which means that even the larger ones will fit in there quite nicely despite its compact size. What's more is it is all white. Now I know the cables are black and I'll come to that in a moment. That's something that I wish would change, but yeah, I'll come to that in a moment. But the rest of the design is all white, and it's also got lots of chrome or silver design points as well. So the standoffs are silver, and you've got the fans, they've got accents of silver on them. The thumb screws or washers or whatever you want to call them, these are also silver, and the access points at the back for all screws are silver. Thumb screws at the back are also silver. Just a nice little attention to detail. You don't have any bold black accents anywhere on this case. It is primarily a white case. Right, what I've done now is removed all the adhesive panels that were on the sides of the fans on that mirrored infinity mirror design, and also on the mirrored panels in the middle of the fans, because they were sort of taken away from the design. It is, as you can see, all whites and silvers. There's not really any black anywhere apart from them cables, which I'll get to in a moment. What I'm going to do now is turn it to the rear of the case, and at the rear you can see the access for the power supply here. It simply slots into position here when you take the rear panel off, and then you can secure it in. I would recommend putting some silver screws, which you actually get included with the case to really finish off that theme. You also get some ventilation here, and that's for the hard drive storage mounts that are above the power supply storage space here. Then you get the rear ventilation for that rear exhaust fan, and also some additional ventilation at the top. As far as the expansion slots, because it is only a micro ATX, you don't get the standard 7, you get 5 slots here. One little detail that I do wish they had really kept on with this whole design is the fact that on the rear you can see these little hexagonal shapes for the ventilation. On the top, more hexagonal patterns. On the bottom, for the exhaust for the fans, it is also hexagonal patterns. But then you go to the rear, and the ventilation for that rear panel are circles. It has just been nice to carry on the theme of the case. I know you're not really going to see the back, and by doing it like this, you've got more ventilation holes, but they are much smaller than the hexagonal ventilation holes that we see here. So it would have been nice to see some continuity of the hexagonal patterns on this panel here. And remove this panel. This panel is, as you can see, just a standard plain aluminium panel. Now, what would have been nice to see here is maybe some dust covers on this, but it's not necessarily needed, especially at this part of the case, because this is mostly power supply and storage. But here will certainly draw lots of air through with those fans that can be mounted here. So even just one here would have been nice to have been seen. Now that we've removed that side panel, we can really take a look at what you've got to work with at the rear. At the rear, it doesn't look quite as tidy as the front, but that's generally the case with most cases because you don't see the rear. The rear is there to shove everything back in. I mean, cable tidy it really tidy and efficiently. Obviously, nobody does that. People do that, I'm sorry. But yeah, generally speaking, you get your cables and you just shove them in, get them in, and push that side panel close on so that you can hide it all away and then show everybody the front of your case. So you've got nice amount of space for that power supply. You do have some supports here to hold it into place because obviously it's going to be floating as effectively from being installed here, which means you get some space underneath it for additional cables. What's more, you do also get that included ARGB fan hub. It does have some sticky back plastic on there with a foam pad to basically mount it anywhere you need to mount it. So I would imagine probably somewhere like there. You could mount it elsewhere, but then you'll find that you can see that through the case on the other side unless you've got fans in place. So I would probably recommend putting it somewhere like that. This ARGB fan hub does allow you to connect multiple fans because of that daisy chain technique. That fan hub is nice and compact. It is very small because it simply has 4 basic connectors. At the top you have 2 4-pin fan connector headers, and at the bottom you have 2 5-volt 3-pin RGB headers. On the other side you simply have the power connectors and the PWM controller cable to plug it to your motherboard and then control all your lighting through your software. It is SATA powered, which is nice to see. I know some companies are still using Molex for some strange reason. Molex needs to die an early death. One of the key things to mention is the fact that everything you see on this ARGB controller is indeed white, matching with the case, apart from one cable, and that is part of the case cabling. Now this cable goes directly to that button that I was flicking through the lighting modes earlier with, and that brings me on to this. Now, the connectivity that you get for this case is surprisingly good. You get the power connector block, you get the USB 3 connector block, and then you get a USB 2 and an audio header connector. But they are black. Why make a case that is all white with silver accents and then put black cables in? It just doesn't make sense. They look awful. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not just completely bashing it. I get it that white ones aren't quite as easily available or probably cost a little bit more, so when it comes to production, keeping the price down low is key for something like this, but it's just not a nice look. I just really think that a white set of cables would really finish it off nicely. But I suppose the theory is that when it's all set up, you're not going to see it because it's all routed into your system. But these headers, like even these, they've just got the spaghetti junction cables wiring here, so that even when it's plugged in at the bottom of your motherboard, you're going to see those colours. Just please try and keep it more colour themed. On the website, when it comes to the connectivity, the I/O connectivity at the top, it says something that's a little bit contradictory to what's actually on the top, because I'll go through it and then I'll explain that shortly. Because at the start you get a power button, then you get a reset button, you get a USB 2 header, you get a headphone jack, a microphone jack, and then you get 2 USB 3 headers, and then finally that LED switch through button. Now this USB header at the end close to the LED button on the website says that it's Type C, but obviously what you have here is just USB 3. Now Type C would have been welcome, and I believe that could actually be a sales point for some people. Some people want a case that's got a USB-C connector on the front, and then they might be quite disappointed when it arrives and it is not indeed a USB-C. At the rear of the case there is also storage points for up to two 3.5-inch storage drives, and they would basically secure to this unit here, and they would then be visible on the other side at the back of the motherboard tray, as you can see here, but obviously hidden by the motherboard. You can also put two 2.5-inch drives, and there is also points for up to a potential third 2.5-inch drive on there as well. Now I don't see why you couldn't maybe put an extra one in there, but what it says out of the box is that there's support for two 3.5-inch drives and three 2.5-inch drives. So there's plenty of options for storage. So there's plenty of options available right out the box in terms of mounting. Mounting and access is very plenty available. As you can see, there's lots of points where you can get your hands in there and really build. I'll really put to test just how easy it is to build in this case in the next couple of weeks when I get myself a white motherboard to put in there. Obviously I was going to put that black one in there, but I really don't think that's going to do it any justice. You're buying a white case because you've got white peripherals, white components, and you really want to show it off. So I feel like I owe it to the case and the company to show it off at its full potential. But overall it looks nice and easy to build in. You've got lots of access points, lots of space to hide your cables and access everything. You've got place at the back for when you've got your hard drives installed. You've got this little space, this little hole cut out, whatever you want to call it, here for the cable management. When you're installing your fans, you've got cutouts on the sides here, here and here. You've also got these two cutouts at the top to allow you cabling at the top of a motherboard, and also two cutouts for extra cabling at the bottom of a motherboard. You also have obviously plenty of space for those cables for the GPUs. One thing I will mention is that this case will not support vertically mounted GPUs, which could be done. You could sort of effectively mod it to do that, but right out the box it doesn't support that feature. But it is nice, compact design, very nice, pleasing aesthetically. It's just such a nice, simple looking little case. On the top of the case you do get that magnetic dust filter, something that I wish was on the side panels. This is rather large, with it being made of a very thin, flexible material, and those magnets, it means that you can rinse it off under the tap. Just make sure to dry it off before you put it back on. On the bottom of the case you can see the 4 fixed legs that have nice rubber pads that sort of elevate it from the floor. The advantage of that is obviously you don't get any dead spots, and air ventilation is maximised because all of the air can be drawn in or drawn out from around those legs because it is elevated off the ground. Now again, you do get another magnetic dust filter on here, which can also be cleaned under the tap if you need to, for the ventilation for these fans that are affixed to the bottom. What I'm going to do now is, as mentioned earlier in the video, is I'm going to take a couple of these fans out so that I can show you that modular connectivity point and really give you a bit of a better idea of how the fans look as well. So now we have the fans themselves. They are 120mm units. They are quite sturdy, quite chunky boys, and they are quite substantial. They do have a bit of weight to them, but obviously that's not really going to matter because it's mounted in your case. They do look fantastic, and they feature a 7-bladed thin design. They are rated at 200 to 2000 RPM because they are PWM controlled. Just powering it through the ARGB fan controller on its own without connecting it to the motherboard just basically operates them at full speed, and you do find that they are quite loud. They do have a bit of a distinct hum to them, but once everything's all set up you're not really going to notice that too much. Also, when you've got it connected to your motherboard, you can really dial it down, and you'll also find that they'll only really kick in when needed because it generally controls itself. As I mentioned before, they are indeed modular. They do connect together. They're not magnets like the Lian Li design. They don't just slot together and they stay in place. They have little nubbins at the top that basically allow them to click into place and really secures it. And then what happens then is you have 7 pins at the side here, which I'll show you on the screen now. They connect to this little connector on the side here, and you simply hold it into place and then slide them together, and as you can see, they hold themselves together. Now those little nubbins that we mentioned that give it that nice bit of strength and rigidity and really sort of hold it together. With the fans off, you can see that mirror panel on the front as well, that's situated in the middle, and that lights up nicely just around that and really reflects everything in your case. You do also get that infinity mirror design in the middle and on the sides of each fan. Now the sides of the fans are covered in that clear plastic to give it that infinity mirror effect, and it looks really nice considering that they are classed as budget ARGB fans. Overall, they are really stunning little fans and very welcome considering the price point. You're getting this case and 4 of these included for less than 70 quid, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. Now the lighting modes are not restricted to just the fans themselves. Now the fans themselves are like a transparent frosted plastic that allows the light to diffuse across the fan, but you also get these little strips on either side of the fan that really give it that extra level of lighting modes, and obviously you've got the lighting on the side of the fan too. Overall, they are a nice, solid, well-built, well-lit fan, and they are certainly very welcome in a case at this price point. And you can really see how effective that infinity mirror looks, and it looks absolutely fantastic. It's going to look brilliant when set up, especially if you do go ahead and purchase some extra fans that match it to really fill out your whole case with the same fans. It just looks absolutely fantastic. Now I'm just going to put this back in, get it all set up, and then I'm pretty much finished with this video. One other little key feature that I'd like to point out with these fans that's actually quite a little detail but very welcome. When it comes to mounting fans to cases, it's a nightmare at sometimes because you've got to hold it in place, get that screw in there and get it all secured. What you find is, because it does have that modular setup and everything all connects to each other, all you have to do is get the first fan in place and then simply attach the other ones, and as you can see, they're all secure, ready to go. So all I need to do is screw them in, I don't have to hold anything, and it's pretty much good to go. Now I will mention that as I showed you that modular connector on the end fan, all you have to do is connect the cable to that 7-pin pinout at the side of the rear one to the cable, which then connects to the ARGB controller, and that becomes your daisy chain main primary connector for those fans. The only thing is, I don't know how many, and I'm going to have to speak to Sahara Gaming to confirm that, and I'll do that once the video's up, and I'll now put it in the comments down below to find out how many fans you can power off one single cable. Now I know most of them are generally, they tend to recommend about 3, but some of them can go up to 4. Some of them actually claim to go up to stupid numbers, but I'm not 100% certain how many you can do right out of a box. So for now, until I've got it in that comments and I've got the confirmation from the company, I'd probably just stick with going with 3 for now, as it is. So that's pretty much our review of the Sahara Gaming M808W. It's not really a review, it's more of an overview of the case, with a full review of the build process and details of how easy it is to build in will come in a future video. So make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss that, and let me know down in the comments what you think of this case. But overall, I am incredibly impressed with this case and everything that you get included with it. The fact that you can get all of this and those 4 ARGB fans for £69.99 really means that you can get a lot for your money, and you can really elevate your aesthetics of your setup for not a lot of money. The build quality, considering it is a cheap case, isn't going to be premium level. You don't have that sound deadening that you see in some premium cases, and the modularity isn't always there. A lot of the screws and the fittings are quite basic, but one key thing to mention is that the materials don't feel cheap. They don't feel flimsy, they're not poor, ill-fitting connections. So for example, for that rear panel, I've had cheaper, in fact I've had some slightly more expensive cases, but really struggle to get it into place because it's just a simple sheet metal that's been moulded into place and then really poorly connected. So the build quality in general is quite good. That modern aesthetic with the borderless middle section of the 2 glass panels looks absolutely phenomenal. When it's all set up and you've got all your components in there, a nice white build would look absolutely stunning. Now some of the key points that I would like to see change, such as the USB Type-C connector at the top, I do believe that that could be a deciding factor for some people, but also the fact that you have these circular ventilation holes at the back as opposed to the hexagonal holes at the back. Again, that's something that not really many people are going to notice, but with my job as really taking a look at these cases and picking them apart, something that I believe would benefit from some more continuity. The biggest issue personally for me is those black cables. It just really sets it apart from everything else, because I would just love to see white cables. I just think that would really finish it off. But again, I can't complain too much when you're getting those incredible 120mm ARGB fans, 4 of them, included right out of a box. The connectivity in terms of that modular connection is absolutely fantastic, because it eliminates any need for wires. You just have the single one, well, 2 technically speaking, cables to plug into that ARGB controller that's included at the back. Everything else is really nicely thought out. It's nice and compact. You got all the extra details of all white and silver accents with the screws and mounting points. Overall, it is a fantastic little case. There are some issues with it, not really issues, it's probably just niggling issues that could probably potentially benefit from changing, but then you could start to cause issues like needing to increase the price. But overall, I'm mega impressed with this, and if you're looking for a micro ATX or ITX case for your setup and you want something that's white, modern, with some nice ARGB fans, you're probably not going to go wrong by choosing something like this. Again, I'll leave a link in the description as always as to where you can get your hands on one of these for less than £70, and that's pretty much it. There's not a lot I can really say other than that. Very, very impressed with the case, very impressed with what you can get for the money point, and it's just overall a very nice case. So it gets a massive double thumbs up from me, and that's pretty much it. I've been Gadget Joe. This has been a Sahara Gaming M808W white case, and until next time, it's goodbye.